Stephen Shields Radio Show.
Hi, Peter Sidgreaves. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm going very well, Stephen. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. It sucks that Scott Morrison lost the election this year and Albo's Prime Minister now. He decided to go Ukraine, and some criticisms are happening around him, saying that he did what ScoMo did in the 2020 bushfire season.
Yeah, no, I have seen a few of those, Stephen, and probably in all fairness, I think there's a bit of difference between Scott Morrison being on holiday with his family, although I guess you could also say at that point he wasn't actually fully aware of the significance of the fires. But I think it's been pretty clear that Anthony Albanese's been out there working. So I don't think, unfortunately, those parallels are probably as accurate as some might like to say.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've got a Labor Prime Minister now. I was a little disappointed that the Liberals lost. I was hoping that we could have more independent seats like the One Nation, United Australia Party, Mike Katter's party, Liberal Democrats as well. But what's the future for Labor, do you think?
Oh, well, I think the future for Labor is, I guess we'll see over the next 6 to 12 months on whether or not someone like Anthony Albanese and his party succeeds. But yeah, that's certainly at a federal level. I still think from a state level, the little bits of plans that we've heard from the New South Wales opposition leader is still very thin on detail, and he just seems to be the man with no plan.
Yeah, what about Dominic Perrottet when there was a train strike, and he's always blaming the Labor Union about the trains, and
I can certainly comment on that one, and that there's no year that there's no doubt rather this year is the year of the strike. You look at the teachers who have they've all gone on strike. I think the public sector teachers have gone on strike probably 3 times or whatnot. I just think that any time that we've offered them a 3% pay increase and that's not good enough for them, they're going on strike. I can tell you 3% is the highest in the country. So if you're in Victoria, you're frozen at 1.5%, and given we've got a Labor government in Victoria, we don't actually see any striking down in Victoria. So I'd like to know from the leader of the New South Wales opposition, what is the difference? Why are we striking in New South Wales when we're offering the highest pay increase over this term? So I think there's a stark difference when you look at other states, other Labor states, and what's happening compared to New South Wales.
Yeah, look, I like Dominic Perrottet. I hope the best for him. Some people questioning his views. He was having a meeting with New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern.
Yes, yeah.
Partnership with Australia and New Zealand, but Victoria's they've got not enough funding in their healthcare system. People are waiting 12 hours for an ambulance. Reading that.
Yeah, look, what I can say is in terms of health systems, there's no better health system across Australia than New South Wales. That's well and truly the case. What I would say is that without having seen any interviews with Dom Perrottet and Jacinda Ardern, I think it's very clear that New South Wales is looking to, do global deals that are in the interest of New South Wales. That's not to say that any global deals that have been done by the federal government won't be in their interest. I just think that, we are a very popular city. We're a major destination for others across the world. And I'm not suggesting that other states like, for example, Melbourne in Victoria aren't the same, but we're taking the initiative to bring more, whether it be trade or tourism into New South Wales, and that's our strategy.
Well, with Scott Morrison going forward, he's going to be a backbencher.
Yep.
In your opinion, do you think he will be re-elected again in the future? Because Peter Dutton's going to take over.
Well, I wouldn't be certain, only because I couldn't tell you exactly what his margin is. But it'll be ultimately up to Scott Morrison whether he decides to continue on as a backbencher, or whether or not he decides to make a career move away from politics. I couldn't tell you. I can only speculate like the rest of us.
That's interesting because, like John Howard was saying on Sky News Australia, people get fed up with you after a while now. How many years was John Howard our Prime Minister? 10 years or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Now he did.
Yeah, and then obviously when he ran up against Kevin Rudd, there was a pretty big swing, and I think what we have to prove in the state, because we've been in government now for 11 years, and we need to show, and I believe we're doing it in a large way, that we're not a stale government. We've got new ideas, new initiatives, and we plan to continue on with those. So we're not just an infrastructure government, although there's $112.7 billion worth of infrastructure over the next 4 years, which is significant. But a lot of this budget is dedicated to empowering women and keeping women safe. There's a whole range of services that we're also providing in this budget, and I think on the whole, it's a very good budget for families. It's a very good budget for those that are aspirational and want to get into work, and that's one thing we've always been very good at as well, is keeping those, getting people back into work and keeping those unemployment figures at record lows. So I don't think we're stale at all from a state perspective, and it's it's our job as a government to make sure that we don't appear that way, and that we've got fresh ideas, and that we're delivering on fresh ideas.
Well, that's what you want with the government going forward. Like when I was watching the campaign on Sky News, the Independents had some good points to bring up. Australia's in $1 trillion of debt. That's a lot of money. Yep. That's from both Labor and Liberal, Peter.
And that's certainly true. But one thing I'd actually point out, which I don't think was pointed out well enough in the federal campaign, is that the amount of money that the federal government spent prior to the election on JobKeeper. That I'd hate to think what that figure was. I know that, for example, in New South Wales, we spent close to $50 billion on keeping people safe from COVID over the last 2 years. And, that's $50 billion. That's a very significant number. And ultimately, that's got to take away from, potentially any budget surplus or any budget, any budget that you actually hand down. These things like COVID weren't necessarily planned, certainly not in the beginning. And all of a sudden, the federal government comes up with JobKeeper. New South Wales comes up with their strategies. I don't think you can expect any government of the day to plan around those sort of costs in terms of keeping our community safe.
Well, the thing is too with Clive Palmer, he was suing Mark McGowan because Mark McGowan decided to publish those things in the Western Australian version of the Herald, which I think that's just unacceptable from the state premier to do that, Peter.
Sorry, did you mention Scott Morrison or did you mention Don Perrottet?
No, Mark McGowan.
Yeah, no, that's right. So Clive Palmer's suing him.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not. And these are the times when politics gets a bit ugly, to be honest. And while yes, I have to say I'm a politician, I'd rather keep the politics out of it and just serve my local community. So I'm not certain of the details of that one. Sorry about that, but certainly, politics should be kept separate from running the state. That's my view.
Well, that's it. That's what we saw a lot during the campaign as well. I noticed the Daily.
Yeah, no, we did. It was from both sides. It was very negative, or from all sides, you could say. It was all a very negative campaign. And I think when you've been in government for that long, you should have enough to talk about what you've been delivering. So, for example, JobKeeper, if you're in federal government, that you shouldn't need to be campaigning negatively about that. But I think there's an old adage, and I think that's probably true, is that certainly in the federal election. And the results probably go to show that you don't get voted in as an opposition, you get voted out as a government. And I think that's probably what the bottom line is. And there are lots of reasons, in my view, as to why the coalition lost the federal election. But that's certainly, as I say, I would see that to be true in that case, in that the government was voted out rather than the opposition being voted in.
Well, my view is we need a woman prime minister from the coalition. I would have thought Julie Bishop would have done a good job. There was another MP who is next to Peter Dutton. I think we need a woman leader.
I think there's no question that we need more women in Parliament. There's no question about that, and I would absolutely support that. In terms of whether it be a woman prime minister or premier, certainly in New South Wales, as you've seen, I would put it down as one of the finest premiers that New South Wales has ever seen, and that was Gladys Berejiklian. But Gladys not only being a woman, she had a number of qualities, a number of very good, not only policies backing her, but look, at the end of the day, I think you can have a woman leader, and I would certainly endorse that. As a father of 4 daughters, I'd certainly endorse that. But you've got to have a government that can actually deliver on policies and promises that they make. And as I said, I think Gladys Berejiklian, from the state premier's perspective, will be, history will show that she was one of the finest we've ever had.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, like Mark Latham confronted Dominic Perrottet in Parliament about gender equality. Dominic Perrottet was supporting it. Mark Latham stood up to Dominic Perrottet, from One Nation. You might question Dominic Perrottet's views at this stage. Do you think Dominic Perrottet is a true liberal, or is he supporting the Labor, like some coalition?
Oh, no. I would very strongly say that Dom Perrottet, the Premier, is a true liberal. Mm-hmm. With both conservative values, mm-hmm. But also, with values. I mean, he's a family man in the same way I am. He has Helen and his 7 children. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, but you can't. I say this from my perspective. You can't be sympathetic. You cannot be sympathetic for those in the community if you have the experience that I certainly have, mm-hmm. as being a family man. Like, at the end of the day, we're teaching I'm teaching my children, mm-hmm. Principles of, what it is to be a good person. And I'm sure that the Premier with his children is doing the same. So, no, I think very much so. He's a true liberal, in the sense that I think you're reaching to, a true liberal without question.
Well, I was wanted to bring up John Howard.
Yep.
For instance, when he have you heard of the term inferior complex, Peter?
Oh, yes, I know what inferior complex is. Yep.
Harold was talking down to him, and he decided to disarm the guns from Australian people because he wanted to be remembered. Yep. Now, John Howard's only 5 foot something. And no, I'm not putting the guy down, but you can see, like, Vladimir Putin's got the same thing, inferior complex, with the invasion of Ukraine. They want to be remembered, but you get people that are putting them down and joking about them as well, Peter.
Well, look, one thing I know about John Howard, because I've heard him say it on a number of occasions, is that one of his proudest achievements was the gun policy that the coalition government at the time brought in. Mm. And one of his regrets is that in doing so, when he met with, I think it was farmers from memory, he was advised, and he did wear a bulletproof vest. Mm. I think that's one of his regrets, but he, at the same time, he claims that policy is in removing unnecessary weapons from Australians as one of his greatest achievements. So they're the kind of, the finer details in these types of things where he has a regret from what is potentially his greatest achievement. So, look, in terms of Vladimir Putin, I wouldn't be probably the smartest person or the wisest person to be judging him. I do certainly think that what he's doing is wrong. I don't think he's going to be stopping though.
Well, this is what inferior complex is, Peter. People put you down, and then eventually, just one day you do something you want to be remembered for.
Well, I think what he, given you look at Crimea and you look at Georgia and now Ukraine, I think what he's certainly trying to do is, whether it be re-establish the Soviet Union or take over all those ports, for trade or whatever it might be. But, whether that comes from inferior complex, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But I think there's certainly something there that he wants to be removed by without question.
Well, that's what it is. It's a complicated thing. I hear it all the time on Sky News Australia. They're all against Putin, even Fox News as well.
Yep.
But going
Does
forward,
that surprise you though, Stephen?
No, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, they go full in depth about analysis and all this stuff as well. But like the way people did, the Liberals got smashed at this year's federal election.
Yeah, they did. Yes.
And more independents won seats.
Yeah. So that in itself is an interesting conversation. Is that the people are losing faith in major parties? Yeah. So there's certainly, I think 11 of those seats, and that's a significant number, were taken out by the Teal team. And if you look at pretty much the two major issues that they ran on, one was obviously climate change, and one was federal ICAC. Mm-hmm. And I saw in the news last night about they're looking to introduce that federal ICAC. Mm-hmm. So I think I think that a lot of the voters out there, I think many of them turned on Scott Morrison quite quickly towards the end. So there are things that the Liberal Party has to look at and consider. I think that the fact that the Teal team took out a number of Liberal-held seats, I think they need to look at why those reasons were. But at this point in time, while Anthony Albanese has his own majority, at some point he's going to have to take in consideration of particularly those independents and Teals, because if he doesn't, I think he may be out of government as quickly as we were.
Yeah, and it's quite possible, like, if ScoMo had won this year, they could have voted him out too and replaced him.
The Teals, obviously, if there's no confidence in, if when running a minority government, something such as that can absolutely happen. There's no question about that. It's not so much voting him out; it's about putting pressure on a particular party that they don't like their leader. And if they're holding a significant vote, potentially if they're holding the balance of power, they may seek to do those things that don't agree with their policies.
Well, hopefully Australia can be a better future as well.
I think, certainly I think most of us are in the in politics to ensure that happens, and some of us, tend to, I'd say prefer the power of the position rather than the responsibility. Mm-hmm. But no, most certainly, it doesn't matter what the government of the day is. I think there's no question that your average Australian out there wants to see a better of Australia for tomorrow.
Yeah, and going forward, hopefully we can see improvements from the state government, Dominic Perrottet as well. Hopefully vaccine mandates can be removed forever. I know there's another variant of COVID. I've had to book in my 4th booster shot, Peter.
Well, I know that. So that's whether or not you have to. At this point, it's certainly only a consideration in terms of whether or not you choose to be vaccinated again. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, I think some of those there's already some policies that are set to trigger in a few weeks that pretty much those vaccine mandates that were put on teachers will be looking to be going. But one thing, and I'm not sure about the health system, but one thing I do know that's always been the case is that, if you're a doctor or a nurse working in a particular department, there's always been a list of vaccines that you've had to have, particularly in, I think maternity is the one where you have to have the most of them. So it's been a little bit different, I think, in teaching than it has been in health, because there's already a precedence there in health, in which, in terms of where you work in the hospital, determines what vaccines you already have to have and keep up to date with.
Well, exactly. You know, a new disease outbreak came around called monkeypox.
Yes, yep.
There's a smallpox vaccine. You think, how are all these viruses just mutating so quick? You know, scary stuff, Peter.
No, it is very scary, and I guess at the end of the day, you know, it's largely the responsibility of the population, you know, to try and look after their own health and the health of others that they come in contact with.
Yep. All right, we'll wrap it up there, Peter. I'd like to say thanks for coming back on. What have you got plans in the next couple of months?
Next couple of months, well, there's, you know, particularly as a result of the floods over the weekend in Camden, which were major, or very close to major. You know, it's destroyed a lot of businesses locally. Residents have been impacted, and particularly last week, I spent almost the whole week down in Camden and trying to put, and did put suggestions forward to the Premier as to, you know, what kind of relief can be, you know, would be able to help these businesses. So we're just waiting for some feedback on those. But over the next couple of months, it's business as usual, you know, but also, you know, we're 9 months out, or just under 9 months out from an election now. And I would suggest that probably in 3 months' time, there'll be one eye on a campaign and one eye on the job that I've got, and that is to represent the people of Camden.
Keep going and keep doing your best work, Peter.
Well, that's exactly what I intend to, Stephen. So, and if you have any ideas, I'm very happy to listen to them.
All right.